So, welcome all to another instalment of the CAPB Podcast. And I'm absolutely delighted, we are delighted as a team to welcome Tom Collins from TC Coaching. Tom we'll get into his story, but he's massively inspiring of everything he does. So, Tom, can you just introduce yourself and then we'll go on from there, mate?
Sure. So first and foremost, just thank you very much. Like, this is really weird. Like, having just left the military after, it depends on which timeline you start from, but let's call it 22 years as I signed on the dotted line at 18. It's pretty humbling that anyone wants, I get humbled that anyone wants to follow what I do on Instagram, let alone anybody wants to talk to me about it, like, outside of that world. So just thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
That's not a problem. Mate. We'd love, as soon as we stumbled across you, we were like, we need to speak to this person. You mentioned there that you've served quite a substantial amount in the military. So can you just tell us about your military career?
Yeah, substantial amount. Old as dick. So I joined. I was born into a military family. We're talking dad, grandparents, uncles, cousins, the lot. Like, I was raised in the military as a pad brat. I went to a military boarding school, went to military college. It was almost a foregone conclusion, although the only person who didn't know that was me, because I actively fought against joining the army. But in the end, I did, and I never sort of looked back. My old man served in the Royal Engineers for 38 years. He was serving at the time, and he was like, the only thing I want is for you to join as an officer, and that's it. I don't want you to have the career that I had. I want you to have something different, which I thought was pretty cool. So I joined Royal Signals, commissioned at about sort of 22 years old. I was 21, turning 22, I think. And my first Herrick tour was within a year of commissioning. Before 6 months, it was back in 2006, 7, 8. So everyone was getting sent to Afghanistan. So that was a pretty hectic sort of
pretty busy time.
Yeah, for sure. Baptism of fire. That was my first unit, first tour. I did phase 1 training, which was my first sort of look at a training establishment in the training world, and it absolutely blew me away. I loved it. I loved every single moment of it. Did that for a year. Really fortunate to be selected as the Regimental Signals Officer 3 Para. So the Royal Signals were farming out their young officers to go and be communications officers, Regimental Signals Officers, because let's be honest, no one wants to do comms, and no one in 3 Para wanted to do it.
I'll just stop you there. So Paul was ex-Royal Engineers, and Paul was a communication specialist in the Royal Engineers.
There we go.
Amongst other things, but yeah.
I mean, he was also unit post NCO, which we don't like to talk about at times, but
that was the best job, by the way. I'm not gonna lie.
And the fact that you've just said amongst other things proves my point.
Yeah.
No one wants to do comms.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, that was awesome. That was, I mean, second to what I'll go on to next with my best posting, like to go out on tour with hands down the most professional infantry soldiers we've got in the British Army. My time with 3 Para was something on Herrick 13 that I will never ever forget. It was absolutely phenomenal. After I sort of came back from that, I did a bit of 2 IC squadron work, some UK ops, some London ceremonial, going to see the back channels of Buckingham Palace. Yeah, it's quite run down, and doing a bit of that, the classic adjutant route. And then after I promoted and a job sort of program managing in London, in main building, I got what was my highlight of my entire career. It was my penultimate job, and it was as a squadron commander for the Queen's Gurkha Signals, 248 Gurkha Signal Squadron, Jai Gurkha. And I will say that outside of health and fitness and having my son, it was the biggest and most life-changing experience I've ever had. Like, the Gurkha soldiers, I will never forget what they as a group did for me. They inspired me every single day, and it was just phenomenal. After that, I mean, and we'll sort of go on to why I'm doing this now, I just didn't see it getting any better. It couldn't be topped. It couldn't be
Tom,
topped.
so I can relate to that. I can relate to that a lot. And first of all, by the way, to be a direct entry officer and get command is a huge achievement, and not all officers get the opportunity for that. So, mate, that's mega in itself. But so my military career, I served for 23 years, but I joined as a private soldier at 16. I commissioned from WO1 when I was 35, and then I did 6.5 years, 7 years as an LE officer, and it was the same thing. So you get to a point in your career where I was working at the time in the best job I'll ever have, working within MAB, and from there I was early selected for ICSC, but the jobs were just rubbish. And it gets to a point where I was the same as you. I was in my 40, just turned 40 odd, and it was like, this isn't for me anymore. I don't want to do that. You can't top those previous jobs, and so I guess it leads me on to the next question, which is, when did you decide to go, I'm going to punch out and I'm going to be a civvy and make a living in the way you're doing it?
I mean, well, there's a lot of dead space there, isn't there? I think, if I'm brutally honest, it was probably about 6 months before I hit the button. It happened real quick. Like, there was no longer sort of thinking. There was no long-term plan. And the long-term plan was that I was going to stay in, I was going to command at regimental level, and I was going to be commander of the Queen's Gurkha Signals, and then go on to be a colonel and a 1-star and all of that stuff, right? That was the plan. That was what I wanted. But 2020, I was a squadron commander. We all went into lockdown. I'd just come from London. I was massively into my Ironman, my ultra running, loads of fizz. Right? I was in just lots and lots of fizz. And then I had all these events booked. I did loads in the sort of 16, 17, 18, 19. And then 2020 hit. And we all went into lockdown. And all of the events got cancelled. And my training just crumbled. It went downhill. It's like, well, why have I done that? Like, I don't understand. Like, early 2020, I'd just done my fastest ever half marathon with the squadron, and as soon as everything got cancelled, it all went downhill. I didn't understand why, and it was down to the fact that everything I was doing physically was due to an external motivator. It was a race that I had to go and do and be as fast as I could be, and it was all external motivators. But when lockdown hit, I sort of just sat around. We did a job. We as a squadron, we built the Nightingale Hospital at the Birmingham NEC, and that was cool. It was great. But other than that, I sat behind my desk at home, having Zoom calls and just chatting to as many of the squadron as I possibly could on a daily basis, so we didn't all go mental, and we didn't, get all claustrophobic. But slowly but surely, I started realising that I was working out a bit more. Started skipping in my kitchen. What kickstarted it was me and a group of mates, like my closest core of mates, had decided that we'd entered this 20-mile obstacle course race that I'd done the year before, called the Rat Race, and it got cancelled. So all of us set up an assault course in our gardens and did 20 miles going round like 278 laps or whatever it is round the gardens, and jumping through tyres and doing whatever we could, smashing through paddling pools or whatever we could to raise a bit of money for charity. And I started just skipping a lot more because I wanted to learn a new skill in lockdown, and I wanted to learn how to skip because I'd never done it before. Why at 36, 37 years old was now the time to learn to skip, I don't know. But I was skipping every single day, and then I started working out a bit more. And by the end of 2020, I realised actually I'd worked out for 244 days of the year. Really slow start, like in the middle sort of months, or sorry, quick start, slow middle, and then I'd worked out loads at the end. So I set myself a target that in 2021, I was going to work out every single day. Could be a run, could be yoga, could be, a walk, it could be a football match, it could be CrossFit, it could be whatever it is. And I worked out every single day. So when 2022 hit, I was in the best shape of my life. I hadn't focused on a goal. I just focused on just doing stuff. and I'd had this complete overhaul in my outlook. I didn't have to be chasing a race. I didn't have to be chasing a lift. It was just, I just wanted to be a bit better, and it completely changed the game. And I thought, well, how do I utilize this? And the one thing that I've always wanted to do, and I don't know why, is I wanted to see if I could push my body to get as dick skin lean as I possibly could and see what it was like to just be absolutely shredded, right? You see him all the time. I just wanted to see what that was like for me. So I saw an old corporal of mine, Wayne Barker, from Germany days, my first posting, and he was doing it. And I was like, what's going on, mate? Like, talk to me. And I entered my first bodybuilding competition. I did 12 weeks into a cut. I then came fourth at that competition. I was like, okay, what's next? So I entered another 4 competitions over the course of the season. And over a 7-month season, I got a 2nd place, a 5th place at an international, a 2nd place at a national. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I had a coach and we sort of got it through. And those closest to me could see that it wasn't about looking like this figure here. It wasn't about looking like that. It was the mental place that I was taking myself, the discipline required, and that's what I was thriving on. So when that season came to an end, I think I'd sort of made up my mind already. Back end of sort of 22, I was like, I don't think I could do the army anymore, because I like doing phys and stuff that isn't paperwork, and more, this is why I came up with PT with TC. It was not personal training, it was physical training. I was just building my body and I wanted an outlet, a journal. But more people kept asking me questions, and I realized that I fucking loved answering them. I loved it. I didn't know what I was doing, so it caused me to go away and do the research and go and dig more into I did my personal training qualification. I did my CrossFit trainers course. I just couldn't get enough of that sort of world. And that's when I thought, army's not for me. It's too little people, too much paperwork.
Tom, I think one of the things is you had a coach who made you achieve things that you didn't realize you were capable of.
Yeah.
So you're like, you know what I mean? You hear about coaches all of the time. Do you know what I mean? And you think, coach, yeah, okay, cool. But then you're an evidence that you went, no, I'm fit, I'm a strong guy, but I want to do this. And he focused you, trained you, coached you into winning awards and getting a medal. That's amazing, mate. I ask a question and I'll tell you this. So when I left the military, and me and Paul speak about this a lot, is like I was always considered fit in the army, always considered fit, could get by, even as an LE, from top 5, all the fitness tests, all the rest of the bullshit. When I left, right, I just did nothing other than play football once a week. But I had no real idea how unfit I was getting until my wife took a photo of me from the other side of the sofa, and it was Saturday night, and we'd had a takeaway, which was perfectly normal and fine, but I was just sat on my phone, had a little single malt in my hand, and she took a photo of me, and when she showed me the photo, I was mortified. I'd put on about probably 6 kilos, 7 kilos, it was all on my belly. I was just like, I need to do something. I need to do something about this. And it was like a pivotal moment. And it links to what you were saying. I don't have the intrinsic motivation. I don't have it. Which is mad. I spent 23 years in the army. I played football for the army. I played football at a semi-professional level. I never had the intrinsic motivation to train. So what I had to do, and I spoke to Paul a hell of a lot about this, was I had to do almost the opposite. I had to go, I need a reason. Yeah. So I book 6 or 7 events a year. Half marathon, 10K, marathon. Paul and I have just, in the last 12 months, ran our first ultra. Okay, and it's like I needed those events, and they weren't all the same. And I wasn't running for time. I just wanted to do them. So it stopped me. Do you know what I mean? So I guess the question in a long-winded way is, how do you find intrinsic motivation in people who just maybe don't have it?
Yeah, it's a cracking question, and I think the large majority of people, if they were really honest with themselves, would recognise that very few people actually have that intrinsic motivation to go out and achieve something like massive. So, the Olympics is on at the minute, right? These are people who, yes, they have the external motivation, but to achieve at that level, you have to get up and do it because you love it, you drive, your passion. And when it comes to building what I now know to just be a very healthy lifestyle choice, habits, and all of that other stuff that we talk about, I realized that you can't get there through thinking. You can't get there through thinking. You have to get there through actions. But unless you have a guide, I'm not selling myself as a coach here, but unless you have a structure, a reason to go and do that thing, and that reason could be external, someone just telling you to put a glass of water next to your coffee machine so that you are more likely to drink a glass of water in the morning than go straight for the coffee, right? Drinking more water is not, so we talk about habits all the time. Drinking more water is not a habit. Drinking water at first thing in the morning is not a habit. Bleary-eyed walking down the stairs straight into your kitchen and without even thinking about it, putting your glass underneath the tap, that's the habit. And you only get there by repeating those actions over and over again. People talk about the habits as being the panacea of healthy living and healthy lifestyle. Oh, I get it all the time on my Instagram messages. Can you help me, cultivate some healthy habits? It's like, we can, but the habit comes way down the line. First, it's action. And without knowing it, that's what I did in 2021. I didn't give myself an excuse, a reason to not do it. There was a non-negotiable. Every single day, I am going to do a thing. But the external motivator at the time was I didn't want to get to the 31st of December and Strava say that I'd been active for 363 days out of the year or 364. You know what I mean? It was no good. 365 or bust. And if I missed a day, that would have ruined the whole thing. So I was like, well, it's easier just to not miss a day. I can't catch it up. And over time, it now to the point where even before this, sweating my tits off down in my conservatory, I was on the bike because I'm back from a holiday on Turkey and I can't just not do it. I know that bike session is not going to prepare me for the high rocks that I've got in October. But I also know that not doing it is just it's something's going to make me feel shit. So I might as well just do it in the first place. That's a really bad answer. I'm sorry, but
no, it's not. It's
really not.
And it kind of ties into this. I was completely opposite to Matt, right? I fucking hated phys in the army, right? I was made to do it. I hated it. It was rubbish. I was middle of the road. But I hated it. I got out. Almost the same thing happened. I saw a picture of me and I'm like, who the fuck's this guy? I'm gonna start running. And then I started running and then I deviated into Olympic weightlifting. Did that for about 6 or 7 years. Really loved it, coached and everything like that. And then kind of fell off again. And I was like, do you know what? I quite fancy getting fat and just, couldn't give a shit. And then last year, Matt said to me, what about this? And there was an ultra in July just gone. 24 hours up and down Snowdon, or with Vassili, right? And I was like, I'd rather rub my appendix with a brick, right? Not a chance. And then he said, come on, this is October. We've got ages away. And I was like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. And that was the accountability, right?
Yeah.
Because it was like, okay, I've got months. And it wasn't like next week where I knew it was unachievable. At that point, I was struggling to run 3 mile without my lungs being 600 metres back, right? So I trained and trained and trained and trained. And then in the January, something came up on my phone. Oh, there's a 24-hour ultra, right, from North to South Wales on the Offa's Dyke path. Go as far as you can go. And it was, and what swung it for me, one, it's 24 hours. There's no end. There was no cut-offs. It was like, just go. And it was fairly cheap for the type of race. And plus I wanted to do an ultra before Matt, because I'm quite competitive that way, right? Yeah. Anyway, and Matt spurred me on, and I absolutely I won't, right, we've got a marathon planned at the end of the year, but I love that type of thing now, and at the minute I'm off, I'm recovering, so I'm missing running at the moment. I'm going walking, which is great, but I'm just really, and I was speaking to my mate today, and I would never, like, me miss running, like, no, like, but I do, and I miss it, and I think it's having that accountability. Now, not to the race or to an event. I always call them events, not races, because it makes it, because I'm not going to win. But having that accountability, really, when you said that, it's just that reason. I now have that reason to keep fit.
Reason and goals, and this is you will hear across Instagram and the coaching world and whoever, everyone talking about having these goals, right? You've got to have a real clear goal of what you want to achieve in order to achieve it, and I go the other way, right? And my method isn't to get a real solidified goal and say, right, we need to know exactly what you want to achieve, when you want to achieve it, and that's how I'm going to create your plan. I get people to complete something called what I've called, rather pretentiously, a personal vision statement, right? Pick a point in time. It could be 5 years, 10 years, whatever. What do you want to look like? How do you want to feel? What do you want to think? What do you want to do, right? And I use that to not roadmap. Some people road mapping out a fitness program, a fitness plan is real easy. Someone goes, I'm going to do a high rocks. We've got 32 weeks. How do we do that? And we can go, okay, cool. Let's start off with a base. Then we'll increase your strength, some endurance, some speed work, and we'll put it into periods and craft that journey. For other people, they don't know. They've got absolutely fucking no idea, right? And they say, I don't know where I want to be. I just know I don't want to be here, where I am right now. I feel unattractive. I can't take my top off when I go on holiday. I can't keep up with my kids. I just don't want to be here. And we go, okay, cool. Well, intuitively, everyone already knows some things that you could already do to improve your life. Right? Drink more water, get more sleep, be active a little bit more, eat a bit less. We all know those things. But having someone from a position of authority who, and I think in my case, this is that, it's not a USP, but it's certainly my selling point, is I just live my life like this. I'm a 40-year-old bloke who gets up in the morning and trains. My son comes down, he sees me on the bike, sometimes I'll invite him in or whatever. The first thing my son sees in the morning is me working out. Pretty much every single day. Zone 2, on the bike, nice and easy. But it's the first thing. To the point where he's really excited to invest in himself. He wants to do running, he wants to do cycling. Not because I'm forcing him, and therein lies the reason. My personal vision statement that I've written out, and my son knows this as well, and he's 9, and he can't wait, by the way. It's in 10 years' time. I'm a 50-year-old man. I'm stood next to my 19-year-old son. We're at the start line of a race. Could be a high rocks trail run, whatever. And I am ready to absolutely fucking dominate that boy. Because it's nothing to do with being competitive with him as a man. It's to do with the fact that in order to actually be in that position where I still have to act in the same way that I act now for the next 10 years. And I know that he is going to pick up on all of those things. So when we talk about goals versus reason, my reason is my 9-year-old boy. He's the reason that I'm doing this, because I want to be an active dad into my 50s, 60s, 70s. Grandkids are going to come along. I want to be able to be their superhero. I want to be able to throw them up in the air and run around with them and do all of those until I physically can't anymore. And I want the time between now and then to be active the whole way.
Tom, I love that, mate. I absolutely love it, right? And we've spoke about this previously, just via message and stuff, and I have a similar motivation. And my motivation is, I've got 5 children, right? So my eldest son is 21. So when he was born, I was a 22-year-old man. I was playing football. I was very fit, very strong. There's nothing I couldn't do. So his whole life, and Cameron, who's 19, and my daughter Isla Rose, who's 15, throughout their whole life, I've been able to do everything. Water parks, you want to go climbing, you want to do the zip line, I'll do all of it. Yeah. And now I've got I'm divorced, I'm remarried, and I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. but I'm 43 now. And I want to be able, my motivation just to stay fit and in shape is I want to be able to offer the same for Theo and Emily, who are 5 and 3, as I could do for my kids who are now adults. That's my motivation.
I tell you what, that is genuinely beautiful, mate.
It's mad, mate. Paul and I are brothers, obviously, and I remember, like, my dad, I mean, he's in his 70s now, but when we were kids, I couldn't ever remember my dad being an active, running around guy, and that makes no difference in him, his job, whatever, but it wasn't so much. When I look back at my childhood, I don't sit there and think, oh, dad was, like, running around. I look at other things. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I want my kids, because, I mean, Theo, who's 5, still calls me an old man, because I've got grey hair in my beard. And it's like, I'm the same as him. If he runs in the garden, I'm going to beat him to the end of that garden, mate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Kids can be. I mainly work with dads, 35 to 50 years old, anywhere in between, and it always starts the same. I just want to be a bit better than I am now, right? But it also seems to evolve and move on at the same way as well, and that is that I've got a couple of police officers as well. They start getting a little bit fitter, losing a bit of weight, start being a bit better at their job, start looking after themselves a bit more. It starts to evolve, and before you know it, it's like, so I didn't know how to tell you this, but I've just entered a 10k. I'm like, fucking brilliant, right? Well, let's train for that then. And they start just, throwing things out. So Rob, he's one of my oldest clients. We're coming up to a year. It's his 41st birthday in 3 days' time. And we've set him a 5k time trial as part of his training block. He's got High Rocks coming up in October. He set his fastest ever 5k time just the other day in a bit of in part of a full session. And he's going for his fastest 5k ever on his 41st birthday. Right, Paul is in his mid-40s. He got his fastest ever 10k. He's got his fastest ever half marathon. Right, all of these things are from people who started off going, I just want to be a bit better. I want to stop working out so that I can eat Haribo and wine, and start working out so that I can Haribo and drinking wine, and start working out so I can feel a bit better about myself. And now, as soon as you start to gather momentum, you start improving, you start seeing what your body can actually do again, you just go. Like, High Rocks is a great thing because it's low skill, and it's a great test of power, speed, endurance, strength. And Rob, who I sort of mentioned there, he's coming up to one in October. He's got more High Rocks events booked than I have. And when we started, he literally wanted some kettlebell circuits that he could do in a lunchtime. A year later, it's amazing. It's amazing.
I love it. I love like that iterative improvement, those short marginal goals. In the interest of time, Tom, So you're now a business owner with a successful business. You've got clients. You do it. I mean, what you do on social media is incredible, by the way.
Yeah.
And you had a full career in the military. So, are there any lessons that you could take, or you have taken from your long military career that you use going into business?
Yeah. Genuinely, I think the biggest thing is that if I'd have known the result, if I'd have known the end result of anything, and I think throughout my military career, or now my second career as an online coach and business owner, if I'd have known the end result, I probably would have been too overwhelmed to start. Because when you fixate, and it's like any fitness goal or whatever it is, if you fixate on this massive target, it can be super overwhelming. If someone had told me, and I do have, so we talk about having coaches, I've got a business mentor as well, right? Dean Hammond, you will have seen him on social media, and if not, look him up, right? Coach Dean Hammond, incredible human. I went to him just over a year ago, and I was like, I need a bit of help. I want to do this. I don't know what I'm doing. And I could see he was doing it. And he and Ollie Carson, again, another incredible business owner. They were, just incredible people. Both, Dean's still serving, Ollie's ex. They gave me some framework, some systems, step by step started piecing things together. Right, became more and more efficient, which allowed me to take on more and more athletes, to the point where now I'm very happy. I've got 35 spaces I can grow because I have the systems in place. I told Dean only a couple of weeks ago, if he'd have told me that I was going to have everything that I've got now in place at this point, if he'd have told me that a year ago, I would have not believed him. I would have probably had some kind of anxiety attack and I would have walked away, because it's so much. And now I just fire on autopilot. I know what I'm doing here. I know what I'm doing there. You know, I've got a performance nutritionist who works with me to give bespoke nutrition strategies and advice for every single one of my athletes. I've got a rehabilitation team who are on board giving bespoke one-to-one rehab education and programming to all of my athletes who get a little niggle so they don't have to stop moving forward. And I'm still growing. Like, I am still super fresh, super new, but that's what I've learned. If I'd have known all of this at the start, I probably wouldn't be here, because I would have given up before I got started. So if there is anyone who does listen to the ramblings that I've got to say, like, if you can think that you want to achieve something, and it doesn't matter what it is, the only thing you need to do is focus on the first step in front of you. Just take it. It could be a call with a coach. It could be going out for a run. It could be just turning that on that chocolate bar, or that night out with the boys on the beers. That could be that one step that just starts it all. You don't need to know the full picture. You don't need to know where you've got to, where you're going to get to, in order to just start.
Love that. Absolutely love that.
Yeah, love it.
You guys, I mean, you boys are going to be the same, right? If someone told you right now that in 5 years' time, the Coffee and a Poo Bag podcast was going to be as big as Joe Rogan, you'd probably gone, yeah, thanks very much. Probably not, you know, and been like worried about it. But instead, you're booking, you know, fucking tiny small guys like me. It's amazing. Like,
you heard it here first. You heard it here.
Bigger than Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan, we're coming for you. We are very slowly with our 165 followers, but there are 165 organic followers. Most of them are organic.
Exactly.
I guess in the interest of time, because this is a micro podcast, and although we could talk to you all day, I imagine, first of all, if we spoke to you much longer, you'd invoice us as clients, because this is like free. We had a conversation yesterday, and that she mentioned the same thing.
You mentioned that. I didn't mention that. You can have my time.
Yeah, we're not as big as Joe Rogan just yet. I guess it's the final part, or the way we like to close off the podcast is, we'll call it an elevator pitch. We'll call it your Dragon's Den moment. We call it whichever way, whatever it is you want to call it. But why should people use PT with TC? Why you?
Because I'm a bloke who just lives the life rather than shouting about it all the time. Like, everything I tell my athletes, my clients, is stuff that I do myself. Because I'm not trying to prepare people for military courses, although I have a lot of inquiries about that, you know, because of being ex-military. I'm not trying to prepare people for bodybuilding competitions. I'm just someone with a boatload of experience across Ironman and ultra running and bodybuilding and high rocks and CrossFit, and I live in a healthy way. I'm not going to say that I'm a performance coach, but if you are out there, you're looking down at yourself thinking, I just want to be a bit better than where I am right now, then I absolutely believe that I can get you there. Because it all starts with tiny little changes, and everything that we do is about sustainability. It's something new, it's something different. You have to actually go after it. You have to dedicate yourself to change. But if nothing changes, nothing changes. And if you are thinking that you want a coach who is empathetic, supportive, a dad himself, knows the stresses and strains of a professional life, knows what time, how precious time is, and has probably given themselves every single excuse under the sun as to why to not go and work out in the first place, then I'm right here. And I would love to have a conversation with anyone who just wants to be a bit better than where they are now, even if you have no idea what that looks like.
That's great, Tom.
There you go.
That's good. I want to go for a run now.
Yeah,
But I can't.
I would do. I would do, but it's very hot outside, isn't it?
Yes.
That's why I was cycling this morning.
I guess it's just a massive thanks for giving up your time. We know you're busy. I know you've just been on your Ollie Bobs, and to come back and go straight into giving us your time for this, we hugely appreciate it.
Yeah.
So yeah, just thank you so much. And I've learned a lot about this, and it's been a real cathartic experience because fitness is important to Paul and I. It's important to Wayne too. Wayne and I, who's our producer with Mill Scrum, Wayne and I go for a run once a week. Okay, we meet up. We don't live too far away, and we try and, like, no excuses, get together, and we just go for a little quad. And it's almost like a social thing. Yeah. And that's one thing. Again, it's like training was never a social thing for me. It was all like, and I've got to go out or I've got to run. Now it's like I'm enjoying it a lot more. So, but yeah, I could absolutely listen to you all day, Tom. Thank you so much, mate.
Not at all. Well, if you ever have a free space in the calendar, just let me know and we could talk about something else.
100%. We'd love to have you back. Be great.
Cool. Thanks very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Take care, Tom. Thanks so much.